Hi, I'm Jeff Foxworthy, and welcome to Gamekeeper Podcast. If you want to learn more about farming for wildlife and habitat management, then, buddy, you are in the right place. Join the Gamekeeper crew direct from Mossy Oak Land Enhancement Studio as they discuss the latest wildlife and habitat management practices, news, and, of course, hunting. There's no telling what you'll learn, but I'm going to tell you, I bet it's interesting. Enjoy.
We're live in 3, 2, 1.
Okay, here we are.
Oh,
this is,
I love this song.
I've kind of got my feet up
song.
in my chair. I don't know about you
What
guys.
you scared of, Bobby?
There's nothing to be scared of.
No, just a snake.
This one's gonna be different.
Just a snake.
Yeah, just the fact that we're sitting in a room with 5 venomous snakes.
Are you on,
true.
on the edge?
I
Of
am
this?
on the edge.
Yes.
I love it. I love
So,
it.
welcome to West Point, Mississippi. The Gamekeeper.
Home
I
of the
don't know,
snakes
this is
today.
the snake pit.
It is
The
a
snake-
snake
the
pit.
snake
That's
cast.
right,
The snake
Yeah.
cast.
This is great though.
It really is. And look, I'm looking across. Toxie's is not here. Imagine
I wonder
that.
why. Yeah.
That-
What, you got a Diamondback rattler in his seat over there.
I don't know where he is. I'm not gonna say he didn't want to come for the snakes.
Hey, he
but
hadn't been around this long because he didn't make good decisions.
I think it's duck preparation season.
It is. That's why
So
I literally just left from clipping duck holes. So.
Yeah. So as a guest, we've got a guy, and I'm looking at him. This guy that looks like y'all remember what Grizzly Adams used to look like?
Yeah.
This guy is like an Alabama version of Grizzly Adams. His name is Jimmy Stiles.
Welcome to the studio, Jimmy.
Love it. Thanks for having me, y'all.
Yeah.
This is fantastic.
Couple
good.
things I got to get
I'm
out of
honored.
the way first, though, Jimmy. So for our friends in Mexico, it'd be Jaime, if I'm not mistaken.
This is true.
So,
Boy, he just
but so look,
never
I want
ends.
you to
It
look me in
never
the
ends.
eyes.
It never ends.
Because I really don't know you. I've gotten to know you, but some other podcast could have sent you in here to try to.
Are you going to hold the snake today?
I am not holding a snake, but I want you to promise me you will
says that
leave
now.
with the same amount of snakes you came in here with.
Absolutely. That's always my plan. I use these snakes for education, so I definitely got to take them back home because this weekend I got to do more education with them.
Do they stay at your house with you?
They do.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you have a snake room? Or?
I do have a snake room. Yep.
Yeah, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. That's cool.
It could alternate as a guest bedroom.
Yeah. If Bobby
but-
comes over, that's where he'll stay. Yeah.
But not a lot of our guests have wanted to stay in that room.
I don't know what the deal is.
That's a good way to keep people from wanting to turkey hunt with you. You can just go off on
Laney,
your
he's
own.
a big
You
turkey
would
hunter.
think that.
I know, and he kills Privet. I mean, he's a
Oh,
gamekeeper.
yeah, he's a
What he is.
really interesting guy.
He's a gamekeeper.
Yeah, I love killing privet. I love killing turkeys. You say that a couple of my good friends that are herpetologists, we all get together for the turkey opener.
Yeah.
and they'll stay in the snake room.
with the herpetologist.
Yeah, exactly. They don't mind. They know the snakes aren't going to bother them. So, yeah, the more room, the better.
You keep them in the 5-gallon buckets at the house, or do you have like aquariums?
I do not. They have big aquariums
Oh,
and stuff
nice.
like that. Yeah, they got plenty of room to roam around and do their snaky stuff.
Sweet. Where are you from?
I'm from Birmingham, Alabama.
Birmingham.
Originally.
Nice.
But last 20 some odd years now, we live in the Conecuh National Forest. Way down in South Alabama, right near the Florida line, in the heart of longleaf pine country.
There's a few snakes down there.
There's more reptile and amphibian species in the Conecuh National Forest than any other public land in the U.S.
That is the perfect spot for you.
It is. There's no coincidence that is true, and I live there.
Alabama
awesome.
is a very diverse state.
It really is.
I
It
could be
is.
wrong, but I vaguely remember in forestry school one of my professors saying that it has more like, what do you call it, physiographic regions
that
than,
makes sense.
Physiographic provinces, yes.
than any other state.
It does. It actually is. It's home. We're number one for fish biodiversity,
Yeah.
crayfish biodiversity,
Mussels?
freshwater snails, freshwater turtles, and frogs.
Man, Alabama's killing it over there.
Yeah,
Did he say crayfish?
yeah. We have
That's
nine
a
over
crawdad.
over 100 species of crayfish now described from Alabama.
So
I didn't know there was
really
different
interesting guy. Your dad is a fish.
Yeah, he studies fish. I call him the bipolar ichthyologist, like crappie, brim, stuff like that. He didn't care about studying those. He studied sharks when I was a little kid, and then later on in life, he ended up studying the little tiny endangered fish, the darters,
Oh, yeah.
shiners, all that sort of stuff. But I rebelled against him and became a herpetologist and studied reptiles and amphibians.
But it's interesting, your story. You're a herpetologist, but you also are into this gamekeeping stuff. Like you're doing your PhD on getting rid of privet with the use of fire.
I am. I kind of a twist of fate. I've been a classic herpetologist for over 20 years now. Done a lot of herpetological research, but had the opportunity to work on privet. Actually, on an area I get to hunt a lot, and so I was like, "Oh, a PhD. That means I'll have to be out there a lot."
There you go.
And so I signed up for that, and I get to throw in some reptile and amphibian stuff in the mix, looking at how privet affects reptile and amphibian communities.
I love this mix of business and pleasure.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried to design my entire life around this. So.
We resemble that remark.
Yeah.
So I mean, this may sound odd. I mean, I hope that your study proves that it does affect them, so we can get more funds to
get rid
learn
of the
more
privet.
about how to get rid of the privet.
Yeah, the early analysis doesn't really show a big difference between privet areas and non-privet areas, but there is a big increase in reptile and amphibian diversity in areas where you get rid of the privet. So, getting rid of privet is good for reptiles and amphibian communities.
That sounds to me like there's just so
I
much
think
privet
Bobby
everywhere
might start
that we don't know
planting
the
privet over
difference.
there.
It's true.
Well, so privet, it's not that hard to kill, and you and I have talked, but
Sure.
we've got a friend that lives in South Mississippi that actually encourages privet on his place, fertilizes privet, and he thinks that it's good for his deer herd.
I thought that was kudzu.
Well, I mean, they
No,
like
this is
a different one.
this is a guy that's he's a serious deer manager. I don't want to say his name; it rhymes with Boston. If that
Oh,
helps you.
are you
Yeah,
serious?
he's really into
What?
privet.
So
Very
cutting
interesting.
down privet, the resprouts, when you cut it down, all privet will vigorously resprout, and those are definitely preferentially browsed on by deer. Although if you let it go for by the end of summer into the next fall, they quit browsing it. It builds up toxins. The nutritional value decreases, and so cut it down, let them browse it, and then kill it.
Yeah, well,
There you go.
I think you should just get rid of it. It's just
You've been using that LS against your privet, haven't you?
yes, I have. And speaking of the LS, Jimmy, hang on just 1 second.
Yeah, I
but
hear you.
Where
Richie-
is the LS?
well, it brought back. But Richie, what happened to the front end?
Wait. Y'all are just pulling my chain.
No,
aren't you?
Richie has. What did you do, Rich?
Richie, it has a grill guard on it.
Well, it did, yes.
Oh my!
Well, see, this is a good topic here today. So, we got a lot of brush piles around the property where they clear cut and stuff. And, the last few weeks I've been out there with a chainsaw, cutting through it and all that stuff. Well, I had the LS tractor at the house. I was like, well, I'm going to use this to my advantage.
Yeah.
So I started, using the front end loader there to push it and all that. Some of this stuff is like 15 feet tall, And so I get up in there pushing the brush pile, and then all of a sudden I hear a crunch. And I pull the tractor out, and I see this like 3-foot branch sticking out the grill.
Was there any fluid?
No,
coming out
no,
of the
because
truck?
the tractor still ran the rest of the day.
Yeah.
This is what I was.
I did remove the
the limb.
limb, but yeah, it's a tough cookie.
Richie's on restriction.
He definitely got a
Going
demerit.
forward, yeah. Richie's on restriction.
Well, so speaking of changing, thank you, Richie. Just be careful,
Be
okay?
careful.
And we will send you an invoice for whatever
Yeah.
damage was done there
Yeah.
on that. And Mac, look at everybody. Lanny's looking at me like, "Who is this episode brought
Yeah,
to you
who is
by?"
this episode
It's a
brought by?
triple threat: LS, Ferminator, and Moultrie.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
that time of year for those things.
Yeah, the Ferminator, boy, that's the way to do some plots, Jimmy.
Yeah, it is.
It's a good piece of equipment, and right now,
I wish I had one. Just saying, for those out there.
well, you know what, we might could help you out there.
That's right.
And then I saw Clay assembling a Moultrie cedar. Have you seen that new one that's got the electric gate that opens up? So
Yes,
you can,
it's very useful.
yeah, that is state of the art.
Yeah, I could use
very
that.
micro adjustment, which you need for the different seat size and stuff. Richie,
No.
your own restriction,
Yeah,
bro.
Richie, you cannot
Driving the
borrow
LS
a
into
Moultrie.
like it's not a log.
I'll tell you what I
truck,
love.
Okay,
is
this is not
the
logging
Moultrie
equipment.
Mobile.
Yeah, they
Pretty good
do.
stuff.
They got some good stuff.
That Moultrie Mobile is pretty awesome. I've got it set. They've got a like an AI program on the app that will identify different things, and so I've got mine set, and it sends me an alert anytime a vehicle or a person shows up on my property.
Oh, that's cool.
You know, that it's some pretty high tech stuff that they got going on. And I'll tell you another thing about like the Moultrie feeders. Since we're going to talk about snakes, we've got a mutual friend, Tess Jolly.
Yeah.
And Tess has told me numerous times that she's driven up or walked up on her feeder, and there'll be snakes around it.
Yes.
It's like they use it as a hunting point.
They do.
So as a perfect public service announcement, guys, when you're working your feeders,
Look out.
You need to be careful.
Be careful.
Absolutely. In fact, the property I hunt on, there's a great set of photos that I love of the old school, those old school trough feeders. They had those.
Yeah.
There's like a rattlesnake laid in the corn waiting on the squirrel to come down the pole to get the squirrel.
That's
How about-
hunting over bait.
that
That's
is.
hunting over bait.
That's
It
a
is.
perfect. That's a perfect stand placement for a rattlesnake.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned Furminator, and I was out on some of our property today, and let me tell you what, it did a great job with the non-typical clover last year. So
That's good to hear.
good to hear.
That sure is. Well, so guys, you can go to lstractorusa.com. You can go to Furminator.com, Moultrie.com, and check all these products out. Moultrie's got a 15% off coupon if you say Mossy Oak right now.
Boom.
So yeah, those
Do you
are,
have to say it into the
no,
computer, or
wait,
you,
no,
you
I
just
think
type it?
You type,
Okay,
you
just
type it.
wondering.
I'm all nervous. We got these buckets full of snakes over here.
As soon as you handle a couple of them, you'll be fine.
Rob chastised me last week. We had for some reason we've done a lot of snakes.
The
lately.
audio sensory specialist?
Yes.
Huh.
So I wanted to name last week's podcast "Hold My Snake," and Rob, kind of
This week's or last week's?
last week's. Well, this week was last week's when we were talking about.
Oh, okay.
Anyway,
Anyhow,
so let's circle
make
back.
that happen.
No, I don't want to hold your snake, Jimmy. No is the answer to that one right off the bat. So, all right. So, Mac, have you got anything else? Glad to see you back. I didn't even recognize you when you showed
he's all
up.
like sun-kissed.
Yeah. Atlanta's good to have you back,
I'm
too.
proud to be back
Yeah,
from the blue water.
Dudley and I have been holding down the fort.
Mm.
And
How was the show in Jackson?
the show in Jackson
The
was a lot of
Mississippi
fun.
Wildlife Extravaganza. We had a great time.
We
Good.
really did.
Good.
Met a
lot
lot of
of-
friends.
A lot of folks were there.
That's
A
good.
lot of good vendors.
Hate I missed it.
Yeah. And, I want to say, I'm glad you brought that up. Ricky Flint spent some time with
Yeah,
us in
our
the
buddy.
booth. And his mother, I think his mother's having it. She's not doing good. And I think she may have had an event Saturday while we were at the thing.
Oh,
And
no.
I've been seeing
Right.
that Ricky post about it. So he's going through a real tough time right now. We just want to let him know we're thinking about him. He's in our thoughts and prayers.
No doubt about it.
All right. So moving back, Mac, is that all the business we need
We
to do?
asked him 8 million questions at lunch, so maybe we need to regurgitate some of those.
I did have one thing. We put on some products and inventory on Native Nursery.
Oh, yeah?
So you can go ahead and place your fall tree order now, and it'll ship in September.
Yeah, we're kind of switching things up a little bit. So just to ensure plant survival, Dudley sat down. We started thinking about the best time to ship plants. So we're taking orders now and going to start shipping in September. Once those September dates roll around, if there's any trees left, you'll be able to still order and get them shipped immediately. So get your orders in.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. Okay. All right. Let's turn our attention to the other end of the room, to this. Look, nobody has worn a ponytail as long as what you have. You're the first in here. You're the first guy to bring snakes in here. You got the longest ponytail.
I feel honored by all of these.
I'm
You hear that?
Can you hear a snake rattling?
I can hear a snake rattling.
That is. How does a guy, Jimmy? You look like a pretty normal guy. How do you get interested in reptiles?
So I guess we covered my dad studied fish, and one of his good friends when I was a kid was a herpetologist. He studied reptiles and amphibians, and so I kind of followed him all around and just became fascinated with reptiles and amphibians. They're just cool creatures, and so I basically rebelled against my father. And instead of studying fish, I studied reptiles and amphibians. Some people might be lawyers or something like that, but I couldn't go down that dark path. So
He didn't kick you out of the family or nothing.
no,
good.
he still accepts me for who I am, which is good.
That's
Well,
awesome.
you probably learned a lot about fish from him, and you wanted to learn about some new stuff that you didn't know a lot about. that was
Exactly.
somewhat related.
He had
now
to be pumped.
You
You were still
probably
into
know
research.
a lot about fish too.
Yeah, I know a fair amount about fish. Like I say, I'm the son of an ichthyologist, so I know a fair amount about fish. But yeah, that's exactly right. I wanted to branch out, and I love native plants and ecosystems as a whole, and reptiles and amphibians are a big part of that. So
No doubt.
so I kind of over the years focused my research on reptiles and amphibians, and then later on got roped into this whole prescribed fire thing
Yeah.
and how cool it is, and then got lucky enough to marry the two together and study the effects of fire on reptile and amphibian species.
Man.
What is a fire? Will a fire run right over the top of a snake and not bother him?
I mean, sometimes they get burned up, but just like we think about
Turkey nests.
quail, turkey, all that sort of stuff, the improvement in the habitat is so beneficial that it overwhelms any sort of like individual mortality you might see from the fires themselves. So
Can we get an
it's
amen on that?
It's a net benefit.
Or a hallelujah.
Yeah.
So,
There it is.
He sounds. You sound like you really see the big picture.
I
does.
try. I mean, really, I think of myself as an ecologist because I'm fascinated by the interweavings of all the natural world. How the plants fit in. How does fire fit into the plants? How does that all affect reptiles and amphibians? And obviously, I'm a pretty big deer and turkey hunter as well. Really, I hunt anything. So how's that all fit into the big picture?
Yeah, that's right.
So
Love it.
Yeah.
So if you're walking through the woods turkey hunting and you step right beside a timber rattler, does it jolt you like electricity?
Absolutely. If you step on or right by a rattlesnake and it doesn't scare you, there's something wrong with you.
That's what God designed them to do.
Look, I don't know what's wrong with me, but things come out of my mouth that don't normally come out of my mouth when I get close to
I
a
sound
snake.
like a child, like
I
just make
scream
the
like a
weirdest
little
noise.
girl. I'll be honest. A couple of years ago, we were doing the Privet stuff, and we're out measuring plants, and had some people working with me, and we're all interested in reptiles and amphibians, and I stepped right on about a 5-foot timber rattlesnake. I mean, just square on its back.
Oh, good
I
grief.
was actually looking for it against a log that was a few feet away, expecting it to be up against the log, and it was out a few feet. And I stepped right on this thing, and I don't know who was more scared, the snake or me, but I jumped up in the air, screamed like a girl. The rattlesnake took off through the woods, rattling and looking back like, what just happened? And then we both looked at each other and calmed down. We were like, okay, you go that way, I'll go this way. It'll be all good.
How did you know he was there? Was he rattling?
No, I knew it was there because I stepped on him.
Oh, okay. I thought you said you were
Could you
looking for
smell
him.
him?
I couldn't smell him. He didn't musk. Snakes do musk on occasion. He didn't musk, but it was probably because it all happened so quick.
Yeah.
Have you ever been walking and just like, ooh, there's a snake right here somewhere, I can smell him?
I have, but rarely does it turn out there's ever actually a snake there. But a couple of times I've smelled a snake and then looked around real good and seen a snake there. But snakes musk out of fear, so they're not just like going around throwing the smell everywhere. They do it when they're like, they think they're in imminent danger. You step right on it or you pick it up or, somehow scare the snake, hit it with something. So it's rare that you would step close enough to a snake, not already know it's there, then smell the snake and be like, I smell the snake. Yeah.
So you just said that you stepped on a big old rattlesnake and didn't get bit.
That's true.
In your mind, and there may be some study, but what are the odds of stepping on a rattlesnake and getting bit or struck at versus the snake just, being scared and trying to get away?
So I don't, there is a study. I can't remember the numbers right off the top of my head. There's not a lot of research on this, but it is pretty rare. Honestly, when you step on a snake, most of the time the snake's going to do what what it did when I stepped on it. It's going to bolt, try and get away, not to say that they couldn't, strike. And sometimes, obviously, they do. Or a lot of people wouldn't be bitten by them. But I think it would amaze people to realize the number of snakes they stepped near within strike range and never even knew the snake was there. I mean, on many occasions, I've walked right by Diamondback rattlesnakes checking our traps, and it would just be, it wouldn't move, wouldn't rattle, nothing happened. And I'd look back and see it and be like, oh man, I just stepped within inches of that thing. And it was just sitting there coiled, trying to hide.
So of the snakes that you've interacted with over your career, would you say a lot? Would you say certain species are more aggressive than others?
I mean, again, there's a great study done by some colleagues of mine, and they went out and kind of set out to prove this. And so they went out in the woods and they caught copperheads, cottonmouths, and timber rattlesnakes. And what they would do, the way the design was, they would go out and they'd find the snake, observe the snake, write down what it was doing. Then they would approach the snake again, write down what it was doing. They would, with protective gear on, of course, step on the snake, write down what it was doing. And then lastly, they would grab it with a set of tongs, like with a glove and a shirt, kind of like if somebody were picking it up, and then write down how often the snake actually struck. And it turns out copperheads were the most likely to strike. Timber rattlesnakes were second, and cottonmouths, contrary to most popular folklore, were the last on the list.
That's
shocking to me.
Yeah.
I've never been chased by anything but a cottonmouth.
Well, let me bring that up. I was reading on a Facebook group.
Everything
all
on the internet
about
is real.
All about native snakes. And I remember reading that cottonmouths are not really the ones that come pursue you like if you're in your boat. That's typically like a water snake. Am I correct on that? Or
I mean,
people say cottonmouths will just come attack the boat, or
I mean, they don't come attack the boat. I've never seen that or really even heard of it. I mean, cottonmouths, if you're going down a water body or you're out in the lake or something like that, the cottonmouth doesn't think, oh, that's a boat full of people, right?
No.
All it thinks is, oh, that's a log, or it's a thing that I could rest on or get out of the water.
Okay.
So they will approach a boat maybe because they're thinking, hey, maybe that's a good place I can crawl out and bask, or not
warm up a little,
not have to keep swimming. If it's if it's a big lake or something. But they're not like trying to get in the boat and then like
eat
jump
you
on your face and eat you or anything.
Lonesome Dove, you remember that one?
Oh, I definitely remember Lonesome Dove. Yeah, that's another big myth, that cottonmouths make these big aggregations and balls, and that is actually water snakes. So cottonmouths they breed differently than water snakes. Water snakes, they will have like mating aggregations when the female gets ready to breed. She'll release pheromones, kind of like deer. It'd be like a water snake estrus situation going on, and that might attract a whole lot of males. And they'll all try and breed, and so you get these big balls of water snakes trying to breed. And, people aren't very good at their observational skills and don't necessarily know the difference between different snake species. And I think a lot of times people equate that those are water moccasins doing that. And really, it's just totally harmless.
Native water snake.
I get folks, I'm pretty good at identifying trees, but for some reason people think I can identify everything. So people send me photos of snakes all the time. And I have to spend a lot of time trying to key them out and stuff. I'm getting a little bit better, but what I'm finding is a lot of people think these, banded water snakes from moccasins. Northern, whatever, diamondback waters. Everybody thinks that's a cottonmouth.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so is is there an easy, like, I'm sure there's a couple of key identification features.
Sure. I mean, one, and it doesn't, I like to tell people I'm teaching classes, the best way to identify a snake is because of the way it is, like if we
like
go
the way
around,
a dove flies is different.
Exactly. The way a dove flies, outdoorsmen should get this, right? I mean, duck hunters can identify, a species of duck buzzing through the air at 60 yards and decide whether to shoot or not. But you got a snake sitting there on the ground and they don't know how to identify it. I mean, it boggles my mind, honestly, because I do lots of programs and I'm shocked at how few people bother to learn the 6 animals in the southeastern United States that pose the most threat to us. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, we can identify all kinds of different bird species we hear. I mean, most hunters know all the, mesopredators and large mammals and all that sort of stuff. But yet when it comes to snakes, it's like, oh, I don't want to learn about that. It could hurt me.
It's a snake.
Yeah, it's just a snake. Well, like in Alabama, we have almost 50 species of snakes and only 6 of them are dangerous. Mm-hmm. All you got to do is learn 6 animals, how to identify them, and all the rest of them are, harmless. Yeah. But in the case of the cottonmouth, a couple things. One is cottonmouths tend to have a dark stripe that runs from their nostril back through their eye down into their cheek, and they have a real angular head, not necessarily a triangular head, because water snakes can spread their head out and make it look real triangular.
Very triangular.
But they have a ridge called the canthus rostralis that goes around their head, and it's like a real sharp cliff, right? It's real angular.
So if you're above
flat on
them,
top, so if you're above them, you can't actually see their eyes. Whereas a water snake, if you were right above them, you could see their eyes. It's a couple things. One good way, if you want to learn how to identify snakes, is actually through Facebook. If you get on these snake ID groups, most of them are pretty good. They're generally all real good about whether it's venomous or not.
Yeah, I've learned a lot from
people learning their snake species.
Same thing with plant ID.
Yeah. Although I've noticed that people misidentify plants way more regularly on those groups than they do snakes.
Oh, yeah.
Dudley corrects them on the plant ID.
Good.
So if we came to your house, you've got snakes and frogs and alligators and...
you got gators in your house too?
They're not in the house.
Okay.
They're outside the house.
There we go.
Yeah.
In the yard.
They are in the yard, yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So if
I don't think Bobby's going to come by anytime soon.
Let's do it anytime, Bobby. You're always welcome.
Let's just say you had to call the paramedics to come to your house. Are they going to stop at the driveway and
Give it a honk?
I mean, I like to hope they come in because they're all contained and well labeled, and I'm pretty meticulous. So I am a firefighter, so actually if something goes wrong, they're pretty much going to page me out to come save myself, and in which case I'll be in trouble. There's a few of us on our volunteer fire department. But yeah, I mean, I have everything very well labeled, and, they're all separate, and they're,
How many gators are in the yard?
There's just one. I just got one gator. Yeah.
Is it have a name?
Yeah, gator.
Gator. I like it.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
How big is Gator?
Gator's only about like 2.5 feet long, 3 feet.
Has he got a collar or anything, or is he just...
No.
chilling?
He's got a big, big tank he hangs out in.
Yeah.
I use him a lot for my educational programs. I do.
Oh, gator.
Yeah, old gator.
What is your favorite snake species, or do you have like a couple of bucket list rare snakes you've never seen?
Man,
what are a couple of your... I have favorite trees.
All right, I'll go with 2.
Okay.
One is the eastern indigo snake. I love eastern indigo snakes. I did my master's research, and I still work with the project some. But in Alabama, we had a project to reintroduce eastern indigo snakes into the Connecticut National Forest where we live. So it was a really awesome opportunity. And my wife and I, the first several years of the project, we implanted radio transmitters into the snakes. And it was our job to go out there and follow them through the woods and see, what their survival was, what their home range was, what kind of habitats were they using, and then be able to compare that to the remaining wild populations. I should mention eastern indigo snakes are federally threatened species, and they're declining across the range. So this is an effort to conserve the species. And
they're a fire adapted species.
They are
right?
a fire adapted species. They use gopher tortoise burrows are very important to them in the wintertime. And so eastern indigo snake, I've done a lot of work with that snake species, and we're really I think at this point we can call that project a success.
Great.
We've checked off all the boxes as far as when in the beginning, when we sat down, we said, well, what are your parameters for calling this a success? We're pretty much there. So it's a great project. Eastern indigo, definitely. I mean, I just have to say that one, even if it's not because, it's such an awesome snake.
Right.
And I will say, since we brought venomous snakes, their primary prey is venomous snakes. These are one of the snake-eating snakes, or Ophiophagus snakes.
Ophiophagus. So that's like a king snake? Is that what
king snakes, indigo snakes, black racers to a lesser extent are all Ophiophagus. They eat other snakes. Indigo snakes actually prefer, we did a paper not too long ago and showed that they do prefer pit vipers, and in particular copperheads.
I think they just taste a little better to them.
Yeah, it's kind of like I like to describe it. The copperhead's like a pepperoni pizza. So the indigo snake, every indigo snake loves copperheads. A mouse, that's kind of like the Brussels sprouts.
Yeah, I got
sure, someone will eat them. Yeah, they're all right, but it's not like a juicy copperhead. Juicy copperheads are delicious.
You probably don't always like to just kill snakes, and we may need to talk about that. But
I don't.
Have you eaten any, and what are some? I mean, do you know some that taste a little better than others, or?
I mean, I wouldn't say they taste better than others. The snake kind of tastes like snake.
Okay.
Yeah, I've eaten plenty. They're okay. They're too bony for my
too much
taste.
Trouble.
Yeah, it's too much trouble for too little meat. Like the only times I've really eaten them and been like, oh, that was good, where I used to be real into wilderness survival, and I'd go out for days on end with a knife and just try and live or whatever, and a couple times I had to break down and eat some snake, and
when you're hungry, it tastes pretty good.
Yeah, sure. So does anything, but I wouldn't go out and like hunt them. Like there's
right.
not. I like my fish boneless. I don't know about y'all, but like even a crappie, I'll fillet that bad boy, take every little bone out of it, and fry that up, and that's how I like them.
Now you're messing up my rapid fire questions. Oh well,
that's okay.
Good answer.
That's okay.
Well, we've got a lot to go over. So, but you were going down a road as a snake guy, a herpetologist.
Yeah.
So it probably does pain you when you see pictures on the internet of people killing snakes.
I mean, it depends on the situation. Some people get all bent out of shape about it. I'm not one of those people per se. Like if you're going out in the Connecticut National Forest in the middle of their land, where their home, one, it's illegal. Two, you're in their territory. It's one thing if the snake's like in your yard or on your porch or whatever, I can totally understand that. But if you're just like driving down the dirt road in the middle of nowhere and you see a rattlesnake over on the side of the road and you stop and get out and shoot it, I'm not as much of a huge fan of that.
I agree there.
That makes sense.
Yeah, 100%.
Speaking of Connecticut, did you happen to bring us any sausage?
If I had known, I would have brought some. I'll send
that is some fantastic sausage.
It is.
It is.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny,
He's
though.
always looking for a sponsor.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
You know anybody there?
I don't. I should. Although I will say most of my sausage is venison. But,
There you go.
But if I don't have venison sausage, it's always going to be Kaneka. Yep.
Yeah, same
So
one.
the only sausage I'll eat besides my venison sausage.
Hashtag Kaneka.
All right,
sausage.
so let's go back to the when we started talking about this, you said, "Hey, I'm gonna bring 3 of the most popular 3 venomous snakes in the South: water moccasins, copperheads, and rattlesnakes." You were gonna bring one of 3. I think you brought more than that. Thank you
I
so
did.
much. We appreciate it.
I did. Hey, that's my pleasure.
He's an overachiever.
So let's check the water moccasin off. Let's finish
Sure.
that. Was there anything else we needed that surprised me that they didn't chase your boats? I've heard that all my
Do
life.
we need to get out a water moccasin?
Yeah, let's get him out.
Well, before we do that,
Wait,
is there
Bobby.
any,
Yeah.
is there any more
There's
questions?
so many questions, you know?
Because when I think of a water moccasin, I think of them short and stumpy, and I think
Sounds like
I've always
we
heard
need to
they're
see
just
one to
mean as a
describe it.
snake. You know, I've just heard they're mean.
I mean,
I'm wrong, evidently.
I mean, yeah, they're not that, but they are sort of weird snakes in that they do weird stuff. I mean, I've had more water moccasins do like unexpected snake things than other snakes. In that, like, I don't know, just like, for instance, Cottonmouth story here. And cottonmouths and water moccasins are the same snake. Let's clarify that too. Doesn't matter what you call them, they're the same creature. A Keistrodon piscivorus, if we want to get particular.
There you go.
So story. I've multiple times. I worked at a state park for a long time, and I'd be walking along the lake. There's a thick population of cottonmouths in this lake, and they'll see. Someone catch their eye, maybe it was my movement or whatever, from a fair distance out in the water, and it would see that and it would just kind of like start swimming right at me. Now, most people would be like, that snake's chasing me, right? Well, I'm not a normal person, I guess. I'll admit it. So I'm just going to stand there, I'm like, what's this snake going to do? I'm not afraid or anything. So I just sit there, and the cottonmouth would come up, and every time it would just slither into a hole that I was inadvertently standing on top of, like a beaver hole or a big muskrat den or something like that, and just like, and it would it clearly wasn't chasing me. It wasn't attacking me. It was just trying to get in the hole that it knew was there and was a safe place. We had some, I've taken groups out and watched cottonmouths, come swimming, and then they'll swim right by a person and go, the other way. It's like they know where they want to go. And if you're just happen to be in between, it and where it wants to be, it's going to go right by you. Yeah. I
got struck by a water moccasin one time.
I can believe that.
And I remember looking down and seeing that this mouth wide open, solid white, and it was coiled up.
Yeah.
And I couldn't stop my foot from going down. I saw it right as I stepped right beside it, and it popped me on the boot, and it scared me to death. My heart for 30 minutes. My heart.
Here we come. It's the big one.
Yeah. That's I'm telling you.
That right there is why I wear snake boots when I go out in the woods.
It really messed my heart up. For 30 minutes, my heart was.
Probably that snake had been sitting there gaping at you for several feet. You didn't notice it, and then you step right on it or right beside it, and they will strike.
So I was wearing just some regular rubber boots, and he didn't bite through that.
That's good.
Is that are normal leather boots? If a guy's wearing some work boots, will a snake bite through something like that?
Absolutely, they will. Yeah. There was a guy in the hospital room right next to my mother at one point when she was in the hospital, and he had been bitten by a copperhead, and I noticed that he was only wearing one boot. And it was just a pair of leather work boots. And the story was that they had to cut the other boot off of him when he went into the hospital because his leg had swollen up, and they cut that boot off. But it had bitten him through that leather work boot. And he actually had gone in and passed out on the couch for a little bit. And delayed going to the hospital, which is why it swelled up before and they had to cut the boot off him.
So I guess that's the same with regular rubber knee boots.
Yeah, I mean, any sort of barrier is going to be better than no barrier. And a lot of times, like, and in particular, cottonmouths are kind of like this. They'll kind of like give a half-hearted strike. They're, if a snake really wants to bite, it can do that. But a lot of times they'll just kind of, strike more just so that the movement and the action of it doing it startles whatever it is and runs them off. And, that is definitely a thing they do. Be kind of give a half-hearted strike, hit the thing, not even really, sink its fangs in, and then scoot off.
Mac, you looking like you got something to say.
Yeah. So what % of snake strikes are venomous, with venomous snakes?
So as far as like snake bites, there are things called a dry bite, and that's where a venomous snake will bite somebody and not inject venom. And that, off the top of my head, I want to say it's about somewhere between 9 and 20% of the bites are dry bites, where they don't inject any venom.
And the other they're getting you.
And then the other, they're injecting venom.
Is there
But there is a difference. Like sometimes they'll just inject a little bit of venom, to a lot of venom.
Is there any truth about the young snake not being able to control and puts more venom in than an old one? Okay.
That is a total myth that a young snake is more dangerous. And a friend of mine came up with a great analogy. If you take one shot of liquor, right, that's going to be a really potent, 80%, alcohol sort of thing. But that's not going to get you near as drunk as if you drink 24 beers.
Yeah.
And the same sort of thing with snake venom. Even if the little snake, there is some evidence that, not necessarily that it's more toxic, but it's a different cocktail of venom, and venom's a pretty complicated thing. But even if that were the case, an adult snake is going to have a lot more venom and be able to give you a far worse bite.
How do they produce venom?
So they produce it in their body. It's a cocktail of proteins and enzymes and things like that, and it's produced in a gland similar to like our salivary glands. So it's kind of like modified snake spit.
Yeah.
But just like our spit is a mixture of different enzymes and things like that help us to pre-digest food. Same with snake. So venom, and I should clarify that venom is for hunting. It's for killing prey. It's not for defense, right? None of our snakes in the United States have venom to ward off predators or anything like that. It's all for hunting. Most of our snakes are ambush predators. So very akin to like a bow hunter sitting up in a tree stand, right? Snakes will, find their good spot, kind of like that corn pile or whatever, and they'll sit there and wait for the prey to come down, and then boom, they strike it. But mice are pretty dangerous. And so, it might strike that mouse or squirrel or whatever, and it lets it run off and die. Just like, a bow hunter shoot a deer with a bow and, then let the deer run off, and then they trail it. Snakes have an incredible sense of smell, and they can actually smell right where that animal's been, and then they'll follow it over, and then once it's dead, they'll consume it.
Need a blood trailing snake.
Oh,
I
that's
can
a
put
good
in my
idea. There
hunting
you go.
vest.
You
Yeah,
little buddy.
I've been telling people, snake's sense of smell is amazing, way better than any mammals. And we really need to figure out how to train bomb and drug sniffing snakes.
Yeah.
But they're kind of hard to train. So
Have you a
that's
water
where the
snake
problem
duck
is.
hunting? Sandy.
I'm interested in some of the other non-venomous snakes.
Sure.
I don't understand what their teeth are like. So I don't know if you're really supposed to handle a non-venomous snake or not. You can get into that, but if they bite, I remember when I was a kid, I'd pick up lizards and things, and their bite, they didn't have two fangs. It
Yeah.
was like they just had these little bitty
chew.
fish teeth or something.
Yeah, exactly.
So are the non-venomous all like that, or do some of them have fangs?
No, not the only snakes that have fangs are the venomous, the quote venomous species. And when you talk a little bit about that, there's some species that are technically venomous. They produce venom, but it doesn't affect people. One classic example would be the hognose snake. It's a cool snake. A lot of people call them spread natters because they can spread their neck out. They're actually rear fang. They're a true rear fang snake. They have enlarged teeth in the back of the mouth that have a groove. But all the rest of them, the coral snake and all of our pit vipers, they have true fangs. So they're hollow, like hypodermic needles, big and large teeth. But all snakes have a double row of teeth, and they are slightly recurved, and they can all scratch you up. It's just only the venomous ones can inject a toxin that's dangerous to people.
So just say I got better at IDing snake species,
Sure.
and I decided I wanted to handle, one of the safer snakes to handle, obviously non-venomous. Can you name a couple of species that somebody that wants to try to handle one could handle, and how you would handle it properly?
Yeah, I mean, some good ones would be start off small, like green snakes, gray rat snakes. Although gray rat snakes can be a little temperamental, but corn snakes would be a good one. King snakes, although in Alabama, now king snakes are actually a protected species, so it'd technically be illegal to pick them up. But in Mississippi, you're all good. So
all right,
you can pick up king snakes; they're really awesome. Even some of the water snakes, they will often produce that musk, but you can just wash it off. Or a pro tip for outdoorsmen: if you're handling snakes and they musk you, get some sweet gum leaves, crush them up, and then rub it all over the affected musky area, and it'll help to neutralize the musk.
Sweet gum.
Sweet gums have a purpose.
That was exactly what I was
It's
fixing
one of
to
the
say.
only wildlife purposes out there for sweet gum.
Wow, I'm one of the few tree nerds that doesn't hate sweet gums because they're good at training the red oaks to grow tall and straight.
Sure.
But anyway, that's another subject. Yeah, so next time I get a snake in my chicken coop, like a gray rat snake, I can probably just pick him up and
Absolutely
and get him out.
And
of there.
if you're in the slightest bit nervous, throw on a pair of leather gloves. While leather gloves will not prevent any of our pit vipers from getting you, they work great for gray rat snakes or any non-venomous snake.
That's good practice. I've got some big old long
Welding
leather gloves for like melting lead to make bullets and stuff. I can put those on.
Slap those on and just go out and grab you some gray rat snakes, and any non-venomous snakes, fine.
I'm going to try it.
And it's a great way to get you more comfortable around snakes. I've found over all the educational programs I do that by getting people to actually just touch the animal, it like instantly demystifies it, right?
Mm-hmm.
People build up in their head all these mystical, weird things about snakes. Snakes are just animals. They're just doing their snake thing, and we're the ones that make all these weird things about them. And if you touch them and you observe them and you see them, they become way less scary because you're like, well, that's just an animal. It's just doing animal things.
You say that, but I tell you what, they give me the willies. I'm just going.
Well, sure, but that's because have you handled a lot of them?
No.
Well, there you go.
No,
Point proven. Point proven.
And I've had more instances where they've just scared the bejesus out of me.
Yeah, I mean, it is very startling to just like pop up, have a snake pop up and you're like, oh.
So I got a quick question, and I don't know this is exactly what happened to me, but there's a lot of king snakes around my house, a lot of rattlesnakes, a lot of copperheads. I live in a lot of public land too, and there was it seemed like we were seeing a lot of king snakes, and then there was a hollow cavity under my air conditioner unit, and I kept seeing this king snake go in and out of it. And then eventually, the little king snakes were coming out.
Ooh, yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, look at there!"
That's awesome.
So yeah, I was starting to pay attention to it and
That's
everything.
amazing.
And then one day, a rattlesnake rolled out of there too.
Huh.
Is that possible, or was it just complete circumstance that I saw that?
I mean, it's possible. I mean, snakes use.
Would multiple species be in
multiple
one burrow?
species will use the same burrow or cavity or whatever. What's cool is that you found young king snakes.
Yeah, it was lots of
really
them too. It
encouraging
was cool.
because the king snakes eat venomous snakes, and king snakes as a species are declining across their range, and so that's why Alabama's protected them, and several people have published studies where we've been able to document their disappearing. In the Conecuh, where I live, king snakes disappeared somewhere around the 80s and are just completely gone.
I mean, we got a good crop of them at my house.
And transversely, we did a paper. It's been quite a few years now, where we looked at some data and we're able to show that where those king snakes disappear, the populations, or at least the relative abundance of copperheads, increases dramatically.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can we talk about pigs and snakes real quick?
Sure.
Do you have any evidence on? We always talk about around here some of these big river bottoms that are just infested with pigs.
Right.
We think we see far fewer snakes when we're hanging out
Well,
around
particularly
there.
managing waterfowl impoundments. When we draw that water down and there's all those little flipping amphibians and fish, the water moccasins
Yep.
tend to flood in there. But over the years, with the hog population going up, and we even see where there's snake tracks and then hog tracks, and there's no more snake tracks.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I have personally observed a hog eat a young cottonmouth. And that cottonmouth turned around, bit him right on the snout, and didn't seem to phase the
just
hog
licked
at
his
all.
lip.
He just chewed it on down. I was like, wow, that was on a management area in central Alabama. I was actually hunting hogs. I don't know whether that hog would have had any, ill effects from that, because I did shoot it.
Oh, he did have some.
pretty soon after he ate the cottonmouth, but but it didn't seem swollen or anything.
I don't think there is a study about that yet.
I know there's not a study, but
it's sure something. It may be anecdotal, but it's something we
yeah.
definitely
I mean,
seem to observe.
anecdotally, I've seen them eat them, and I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, hogs have a big impact on a lot of other ecological things.
Yeah,
and there is a lot of evidence now that they predate on reptile and amphibians a lot. And they're just nasty creatures, and we should get rid of them all.
Hey,
Yeah.
this guy's dead on over here.
So, is there any other wives' tales about cottonmouths we need to clear up before we move on? It seems like there was. You had mentioned earlier that back at some point in time that people referred to the copperhead as a upland moccasin, and the water moccasin as a.
That's just a common name thing, though, right?
Yeah, it is. But yeah, they water moccasin, cottonmouth, again, same critter. Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of. Probably cottonmouths are the most mystified of all of our venomous snakes. Like, people come up with all kinds of crazy things pertaining to cottonmouths. Most of those are not rooted in any sort of scientific fact.
Boy, you flip a John boat over this time of year, there's going to be one laying underneath it.
Shoot, where I was this morning, they're going to be everywhere.
Yeah, they do tend to get up under John boats.
What's the biggest cottonmouth?
I hear a lot of people talk about them up on docks and stuff, and
that's probably a water snake.
That's probably a water snake. Most of the time when people send me a picture with the title "Cottonmouth," I found on my dock, 90% of the time it's a water snake.
What about when you're in your boat and you see a snake on a overhanging branch above the water? Is that more often not a cottonmouth? I mean, do they?
I mean, they do get up there. I will say the majority of the time I see them, it's a water snake. But they definitely, I mean, you could definitely find a cottonmouth. I've seen them up in branches, in shrubs along creeks and, the edge of lakes and stuff like that.
But they don't get there. You rarely see one over a 3 feet long.
I mean, 3-4 foot, 4 foot cottonmouth would be like the upper end of cottonmouth. And a lot of people are like, man, I saw a 7 foot cottonmouth. And they'll be like, it was as big around as my arm. And I'm thinking, well, there wasn't a 7 footer because they're very stout creatures. And the biggest one I've ever seen was just under 6 feet. And that thing was as big around as my calf. I mean, it was just it was the most intimidating snake I've ever seen. And I've worked with some 6 and 7 foot diamondbacks before.
Wow.
I agree. Some of those ones we've seen working on duck impoundments are quite intimidating. Yeah. And I don't know if they're territorial or they know they're that big. And I'm not going to say they were chasing me, but I will say they stood their ground. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I mean,
it's like they looked at you and they didn't run. They're like, "What's up?" You know?
Yeah. I mean, there's not a lot of predators at that point.
Right.
About the only thing in nature that predates on something like that would be, big hawks and owls and things like that.
When did you show them the video of some of those?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Maybe
when they look at you and they start going like, moving those jaws, that's when they're big.
All right, so do we want to move on to the Copperhead now and talk about him?
Yeah.
Well,
we spent the whole time on Cottonmouth.
Well, yeah, the time's getting by. Can we talk about Copperhead for a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Cottonmouth or copperheads. They're the most common venomous snake in the southeast, and really the eastern United States. And they're also responsible for the most envenomations of any snake in the eastern United States. Probably because one, they're really common, and two, copperheads do really well living around people. Whereas like a big rattlesnake, people might see him, kill him, etc. They just don't do well around people. Copperheads do real well. I've seen them literally in downtown Birmingham. I've gotten copperheads like extremely urban environment. But they also, can be found in rural areas, of course. Sure. So they're really common species. Best way to identify a copperhead, and at some point we'll have to get some of these snakes
out. Let's get some snakes out.
We're going to get snakes out?
Let's get a copperhead out.
Look, I'm at the far end of the table.
You're going to put this off the whole time.
Bobby needs to hold one.
I think Bobby should hold one.
I mean, it helps to explain.
Let's see him. Let's get him out.
It helps to explain how to identify them if we actually look at them.
Let's look at them.
So let's see if we can do this.
Pucker up, Buttercup.
We'll get out a copperhead and take a look at it. One of these buckets contains copperhead. Or it should contain a copperhead unless it's gotten out or something.
Yeah. Look under the table, Bobby. Watch your feet.
I got my feet up on
take the lock out.
The lock's off the bucket. I did lock all my buckets.
Guys, if you're listening to this, you can go to YouTube and be able to watch this.
All right, so we're going to get out the copperhead.
Holy mackerel.
It's just a small copperhead.
Look
at him. It's just a copperhead, right? It's not like jumping off sticks trying to attack us or anything crazy, right? But the best way to identify them is by their pattern, and that's true of all of our venomous snakes. Just like birds or whatever, the best way to identify them is their pattern. And if you notice, the copperhead has basically like hourglasses wrapped over the back of the snake, and I like to say, if the snake has an hourglass on it and you're messing with it, your time is limited. I mean, that's not necessarily true because you're probably not going to die from a copperhead bite. But it helps. It's a good way to help people remember that, copperheads have an hourglass. The dark bands that go across them are wide at the bottom and narrow at the top.
Look at that thing.
And
it's beautiful. It really
how long is that snake? Is that 3 feet?
Yeah, it's about 3 foot.
I'd have probably said 4 or 5, if I saw
exactly.
him.
Everybody over exaggerates snakes. I mean, there's, Yeah.
Kind of like
He's pretty
deer antlers.
He's quite curious. Look at him.
Turn him so I can see him a little bit better. I can see his back.
Sure.
Get closer to Rob with it.
Yeah.
Now, Rob, you get closer to it. There we
I
go.
think I could brought a telephoto Lynn.
He's just chilling.
He really is
and
beautiful,
smelling.
Yeah, and he's just.
Or
looking
is that a
around.
male or a female? Can you tell?
You can't really necessarily just look at him and tell. I mean, I know that this one is a male
Okay.
because I've probed him, but basically you have to probe something inside their parts and to tell whether they're male or female.
And they have two.
I mean, I feel like David Letterman and that Hannah guy right now.
Yeah,
you
that's
know?
true.
Yeah.
It's cool.
You know,
Jack Hanna.
yeah. Or Marlon Perkins as
Marlon-
Jim
Oh,
Reddy's
school.
snake.
That's old
That's
school
what I'm
right
talking
there.
about.
Mutual of them all.
Yeah,
Wild
the
Kingdom.
Wild Kingdom.
That was awesome.
But yeah, now
I think
some
he smells you,
people.
Bobby.
I notice nowadays everybody talks about it's real popular to talk about how they have Hershey Kisses stuck to their side, which I can see that a Hershey Kiss kind of on the inside of the hourglass
boy.
there.
That's awesome.
So that snake also, like from time to time, we have these cicada.
Yeah, the cicada
And so
patches.
they love to eat those cicadas.
They do eat cicadas. They do like to eat cicadas in the summertime. I mean, not that like they're gonna be out there like,
Just gorging on them.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that like if we have a big cicada hatch, all of a sudden now we're gonna have a gazillion copperheads. That's not how population dynamics in any wildlife work. But they do, when the cicadas are out, they do preferentially hunt cicadas. Yeah.
He's just chilling. He's just
I
got
mean,
rested
this is
up.
so cool.
Yeah, look at him.
Yeah.
He's cool.
So that's Copperhead. You got that hourglass pattern. If you look real close, you can see his pit, where they get their name, pit viper.
Yeah.
Between their nostril and their eye, they have what's called the loreal pit, which is connected to their optic nerve. It allows them to sort of overlay a heat or thermal image on top of their regular vision.
How good can the snake hear?
Very poorly. They don't have ears like us. They don't have a tympanic membrane like mammals and birds and frogs and things do. But they do have bones in their body, so they can sense vibrations, and they could certainly, they could sense the deep vibrations of our voices, stuff like that. Obviously, vibrations and moving, on the floor or something like that. But they don't have the fine scale hearing that birds and things that make noises have.
What's interesting, I'm looking around the room and nobody is taking their eyes off the snake. But it is beautiful.
Yeah.
What's his name?
This one is named Copperhead.
Copperhead.
We got
yeah.
Gator and Copperhead.
This guy's
He's killing it.
Yeah.
Original.
Well, I don't necessarily name my snakes.
Oh, he's getting down.
Yeah, he's gonna want to go back
What
in
is
the
that?
bucket.
What is that term people use? Anthropomorphizing.
Anthropomorphizing.
Yeah.
I don't generally do that with my snakes because I want people to remember that's a copperhead. And from years of teaching kids and other people, people tend to associate whatever you name that thing as that's the thing, right?
Yeah, that's
so if
smart.
I call him George, I don't want somebody to go out and see a copperhead and be like, oh, look, that's a George. What was George? I don't know.
Bam.
Okay.
I want them to know that's a copperhead.
That's smart. That's smart.
That is smart.
That's some fancy buckets he's got. These
Yeah.
they
Hey, man,
lid screw
I'm
down.
A professional. I'm a professional. and that trains professionals.
Yeah, don't try.
So I do a lot of work
Man.
training.
So your wife's into snakes too?
Yeah, my wife is into snakes. She actually runs. We worked together for a long time, but now she runs a science center.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Near us, and.
Let's get another one out
Yep.
while we're on the
Yep,
road.
but y'all have some interesting
we
conversations.
missed out on the.
Yeah, we got to
Cottonmouth.
see the cottonmouth.
So,
Here, let me trade seats with you, Bobby.
No, I'm good.
we
Right?
got-
Come on, Bobby. Come on down here.
Gotta get the cottonmouth out. I mean, that's just a given. Can't not get out the cottonmouth. And
Look at the size of those tongs.
He's got backup for the cottonmouth.
well, in case he like falls off the hook, I want to be able to get him, not let him get around Bobby's feet or anything like that.
Oh, there he is.
He's not a big one.
No, he's not a big one, but he's beautiful.
But I bring this one to show that pattern because, again, like the Copperhead, they have a very similar pattern. The dark bands are wide at the bottom, narrow at the top, but they're kind of pixelated,
Yeah.
right? Where they're nice and smooth and
It looks like a pile of leaves to me, all of it.
On the Copperhead, the Cottonmouth, they're kind of pixelated, but notice that dark stripe down his face and that real angular head. They actually have a scale.
What you were saying about looking in from the top is really interesting.
Yeah.
How you can't see his eyes.
Yeah, you can't see his eyes.
Yeah, the water snakes have kind of a weird looking head.
Yeah,
They
got
do.
a little
And when they
beady bob-
flatten
beady
their
bob.
head to make it look triangular, it makes it look even goofier because
does.
it kind of forces their eyes towards the middle of their head.
Yeah.
Whereas this guy, he's just like,
Yeah, don't mess with me.
yeah.
That's not a big one. How old is that snake?
This one's only about 2 to 3 years old.
Let me guess his name.
Last year it had a green tip, so it was either 1 or 2. So this one's so now he's 2, maybe 3.
So is his name Cottonmouth?
Very good.
Thank
his
you.
name
thank
is
you.
Cottonmouth.
I'm catching on here.
Are they in the same genus as copperheads?
They are. They're in the same genus. This is a Keystrodon piscivorus. Copperheads are a Keystrodon contortrix. But copperheads, while they account for a lot of venomous snake bites, their venom is not super potent.
Yeah.
Not to say that you shouldn't go to a doctor immediately. You most definitely should.
Right.
But as far as the venomous snakes that we have in the southeastern U.S., and really the U.S. kind of as a whole, your chances of dying from a copperhead bite are very, very, very slim.
So is it true that you can only have the anti-venom for these venomous snakes one time in your life?
That is definitely not true.
Okay.
That's a great myth to clear up. So antivenom has changed a lot in the last 20 years. So before we had antivenom that did have a decent chance of causing an allergic reaction. But we've developed, through science, we've developed a way to basically clean that up and cleave off the parts of the antibodies that would be dangerous, that would cause that allergic reaction. And so now your chances of having an allergic reaction to snake venom, anti-venom, are incredibly low. And so, I wish that a lot of our doctors would kind of catch up with that knowledge and realize that, the only way to treat a snake bite is with antivenom. And so we should give it, pretty liberally if possible.
It's pretty expensive, though, isn't it?
It is pretty expensive, but most insurances cover it. Most people have insurance. So, while the doctor bill might be, $100,000 or more, insurance is paying everything except for your deductible. So what do you care? That's the insurance company's problem, not yours.
I'm glad Toxie or Mr. Bill in the room to hear that.
And unfortunately, that's like any of our drugs.
Yeah, that's right.
Drug prices are crazy,
Ridiculous.
stupid, expensive, and that has. Well, we don't have time to get into all.
That's right. That's a
the
whole
reason
nother
that
podcast.
is. But I'll just say, in other countries, it's not that expensive.
Mm-hmm. You want to pet him, Bobby?
No, I'm good.
Sure?
But he is. Boy, he's just running that tongue out there.
Yeah, he's sniffing. He's like, if I brought my coonhound in here and let him meet everybody, first thing coonhound's going to do is go sniff everybody, see what's up. Same thing with snake. He's sensing the world around him through his smell.
I'm just so intrigued. I kind of wish I could handle it. I know that would be stupid, but
Well,
it's so pretty. And
I
he's
will
like,
say in a little bit, we can put him in a tube, and then you can.
You can hold a snake, Dudley.
okay.
Yeah. But I
He
will
looks like
say,
he's kinda
well, I
looking
will
at
say, as a professional, we don't, like, I don't pin them behind the head or do anything like that. There's much safer way. We actually, if we have to work with them, like if I got to take blood samples or put microchips in them, things that I commonly do, we put them in a clear plastic tube that allows us to handle them safely,
So they
or at
can't
least
turn
a
around.
lot more safe.
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah.
typically feed your pet snakes?
I mean, this guy, most of them get frozen thawed mice.
Okay.
The occasional, like this guy, I might give him some fish. Maybe roadkill frog I found in my front yard or something like that.
Okay.
Would he eat every day?
No, I feed most of my snakes about once a week during the summertime, and then snakes are pretty amazing creatures. In the fall, they'll start to senesce. They'll start to slow down, and he'll go from November through February not eat anything. I might even offer a time or two just to see if he's hungry and wants to eat. But generally, from around November to the end of February, they won't eat anything. They'll just sit there.
So if you one Sunday afternoon, you and your wife would go down to the pond and go fishing.
We'd hold up snakes and dance around. No, I'm just
So if you're pushing the boat out, she's in the boat already. You're pushing out, and you're wearing flip flops, and you get bit by a water moccasin on the ankle. Are you going to continue to go fishing?
Absolutely not. We are going to go to the emergency room
Right then.
immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's a saying amongst doctors that treat a lot of venomous snake bite: time is tissue. So a lot of our pit vipers, one of the main problems that they cause is destruction of tissue and destruction of red blood cells and things like that. And the quicker you get antivenom in you, the quicker that can start to counteract the effects of the venom, and the less tissue damage and things like that you are likely to have.
So you would probably take that flip flop off. You're going to sit in the passenger seat and stick your foot out the window and hold it up high or above your heart?
Honestly, I don't necessarily. Ideally, you want to elevate above the heart, which is different than what we said 10, 15 years ago. But through some great work by some of our friends and colleagues that are amazing snakebite physicians, toxicologists, and epidemiologists, we found that elevating above the heart is good. But, and this is where people get in trouble, and we've had some problems. People tend to get worried. You've just been bitten by a snake. Panic tends to run rampant, and things like auto accidents occur. And if you're going down the road and your leg's sticking out the window and you get in a car wreck, you're going to have a lot bigger problems than whatever the snake did to you.
So always buckle your seatbelt and keep
always
the windows closed.
buckle
Safety
your
first.
seatbelt and just ride to the hospital. It's not like you got to be there within 10 minutes or you're going to die. You got plenty of time to make it to the hospital.
Should you call ahead and say, hey, look here, I'm coming in I've been bit by this kind of snake, or does that even matter?
That doesn't matter. I would just go ahead and call and say, I've been bitten by a venomous snake. I'm headed to, such and such ER. Make sure you go to an emergency room. Don't go to your family practitioner. Don't go to a doc in the box type place. Urgent care, that's not for actual urgent care. That's for colds, right? You don't go there with a snake bite. You want to go to a place with an actual emergency room where they're likely to have antivenom. And if you do that, then you're going to be fine. Call ahead. That helps because it does take them a little while to prep the antivenom and get it going. But if you just go there, you'll be totally fine.
So if you don't know what type of snake it is or it slithers off, should somebody try to figure out what type?
Definitely not. Yeah,
That's another risk of getting bit, right?
Yeah, that's another risk of getting bit. It's a delay in getting to the hospital, any of that sort of stuff. If, like, you get bit and there's a cottonmouth sitting there, and you got your phone, if you can take a real quick pic, sure, that might be helpful, maybe long down the road. Mostly for that epidemiological work I was talking about, to know, what the outcome of the bite was relative to, being able to positively identify the snake. And but all the antivenom that's used in the United States is used for the same antivenom is used for all of our pit vipers.
Okay.
So whether it was a rattlesnake, copperhead, cottonmouth, you go to the doctor, they're going to give you the same antivenom regardless of what it is.
Okay.
So, yeah, you definitely don't need to catch it, kill it. Definitely don't take it to the hospital. Nobody wants a snake in an ER, especially the ER doctors.
Yeah, I bet that's right.
We have a crowd gathering outside.
They want to see the rattlesnake.
So
You wanna see the
sounds like it.
Time to
sounds
see the
like he's-
rattlesnake.
Yeah,
Sounds
while
like
Jim
it's a-
prepares the rattlesnake.
So I'll get out
The big one.
Am I hearing one rattling?
maybe. I could hear this one.
That could be
Just a
Richie
second.
breathing over here.
Yeah, Richie having heart palpitations.
So I'll actually get out the largest rattlesnake species that we have in the United States.
Oh,
I can
He's
hear
He's
it.
rattling.
World.
He's rattling.
Now you can hear him for sure.
Oh yeah, you getting that?
Rob, you need to get a little closer, Rob. Get some.
Let's see if I can get him to balance on the hook good.
Oh, look at him.
awesome.
Yeah,
So-
boy.
Beautiful.
What's that one?
That would be. Let me guess. That's
All right.
the Eastern Diamondback.
That's the Eastern
Diamondback.
rattlesnake. And Eastern Diamondbacks are the largest rattlesnake species in the world. They're the largest venomous snake in North America. And
Listen at
definitely
him.
not something you want to get bitten by. This one is a very young one. These get up to 7, even over 7 feet long.
And what's their range?
They tend to range in the lower coastal plain. And so Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, they're going to be, in the longleaf pine ecosystem. So if you think gopher tortoises, you think indigo snakes, you think, longleaf pine, quail hunting, that's where the Eastern Diamondback is. This far up in Mississippi, I imagine it would be very rare you ever saw an Eastern Diamondback.
Yeah, most are.
So why is he rattling right now?
Well, he's kind of agitated that I'm making him sit on this little hook.
How and what's the biggest one going to be?
I mean, in the wild, rarely they get over 6 feet. But I have caught them in the Conecuh 6 to 7 foot. Biggest one I've ever caught in the wild was right at 7 feet long. But that would be a really big one. And that's like one in many hundreds
Okay.
that I've caught would be that big. But 5 foot is very common. I get them 5 feet long very commonly.
So what's the myth on the rattles that we need to dispel? I feel like he decided to jump off the hook.
He decided to jump off the hook. Everybody looked real nervous for a second.
There he goes again.
We're just gonna.
How about the controller?
Nah, you're fine. You're fine down there on the bottom.
Is he on the floor?
Yeah, the camera guy. I am impressed, Rob.
Cool under pressure. Cool
Yeah,
under pressure.
that is good.
So everybody talks about how you can age a rattlesnake by its rattle. That is not true. Rattlesnakes get a new segment every time they shed their skin. They can shed their skin 1 to as much as 5 times a year. So automatically that's going to be a little askew. But those rattles are very fragile. Basically, it's just a little piece of dried skin, which would be real similar to your fingernail. They can break them off very easily. And some of the biggest rattlesnakes I've caught had the little tiny, 3-4 segments to their rattles. And I've caught several that were just kind of average size, that had, pretty long strands that were, 7, 8, 15 segments in their rattles. So you cannot age a rattlesnake by its rattles. For the most part, you can get an idea if you know what you're looking for, whether the snake is older, by actually the shape of the each segment, whether it's the same or whether it tends to taper. But you couldn't be like, well, that rattlesnake is 14 years old.
Right.
Do they reproduce every year?
They can. They can reproduce every year. They don't necessarily reproduce every year. It depends a lot on the health of the snake, how much food it's been able to get in the last couple years, whether it had disease or something like that year. So they're capable of it, but it would be rare that they gave birth every year.
And some of them have eggs, and some of them have live.
I was going to say the
eggs, don't
same
they?
thing.
Don't
I have no idea.
Why?
Yeah. So all of our pit vipers are cottonmouths, copperheads, and rattlesnakes. They all give live birth.
Okay.
As well as some of the water snakes, garter snakes, things like that. All of the rest of them lay eggs. So the only venomous snake that we have in the United States that lays eggs would be the coral snake.
Okay.
And that's a member of the cobra family.
And I've never even ran into one in a while, but they're supposedly around.
Again, they're super rare, and coral snakes are what we call fossorial snakes. They spend most of their life underground, and so they're down there doing their thing underneath the dirt. Nobody ever sees them. One, they're pretty rare to begin with. Two, they spend most of their life underground, so they're just rarely encountered snakes. Where they're most common in peninsular Florida. People see them regularly, but that's because that's where they're most. That's where the largest population
Most common,
is.
yeah.
But in Mississippi, Alabama, and even Georgia, they're pretty rare, pretty rarely encountered. So I do want to get out.
Yeah.
Who's
What's
next?
the next one? Who's next?
This guy right here, because he's pretty awesome, and this is the rattlesnake nobody ever remembers, right?
We forget the one we forget about.
Yeah, this is the one everybody forgets about. I always ask people, see if they can name the 6 venomous snakes that live in the Southeast, and generally with a little work, most people and most groups will get 5 of them, but they always forget this little dude.
Look at that little dude.
And that little dude right there is the pygmy rattlesnake.
I was going to say the pygmy rattler.
Yeah, that's the pygmy rattlesnake.
I have never seen one of those alive.
And did y'all hear him rattling? He was rattling when I got him out.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, you can't.
Oh, trick
That's why you
question.
didn't hear him. And this is one that a lot of people will be like, it doesn't have a rattle.
Yeah, I see
It
down
definitely
there.
has a rattle. You
Yeah.
can see his rattle. In fact, it has a very impressive
Yeah, it
string
is.
of rattles. But they're so small that they just don't make a noise that people can hear. Some people say they sound like insects. We had this one in a glass cage the other day, and it was right beside the cage rattling. I could see it rattling, and I stuck my ear right up to it, and I could not hear it rattle. Now, I don't have the best hearing, unless it's a gobbling turkey. Then I can hear that from like 3 miles away.
Yeah, I can too.
But I cannot hear a pygmy rattlesnake rattle. So,
Well, he's beautiful. I tell you that.
but
much.
they're
Look
they're
at
cool
him.
snakes.
Yeah.
Speaking of hearing them rattle, I can remember.
What? Go back up.
So I can remember one more. When I was still lived in Montgomery, so it's been a long time ago.
Back in the 1800s.
Yeah. So I was walking across a pasture in the dark to go to a listening spot turkey hunting, and a snake started rattling. and I couldn't figure out where it was.
Oh yeah.
I mean, is that normal? I mean, I really couldn't tell if it was in front of me or just where it was. It's in the dark.
It's a loud noise, and so it's hard to pinpoint.
So I just stepped back because I figured I thought that was the smartest thing to do.
That is the best plan. Always best to just step backwards.
I almost wouldn't want to move and stepping on it.
When I was much younger, and some might say dumber, we were out in New Mexico, and we went on like a night hike, and we wanted to leave our flashlights behind and just feel the trail, and just walk around without flashlights, find our way through the woods. And we got 50 yards from camp before the first rattlesnake started rattling. We didn't realize that we were in a pretty hot spot for rattlesnakes. And by the time we got back to our camp, which again was not very far, there was 4 different rattlesnakes rattling. We'd walk one way a little bit, and then be like, "Oh, we're not going that way." And then we'd hear one behind us start rattling. And the western rattlesnakes tend to rattle from a greater distance than our eastern rattlesnakes. Our eastern rattlesnakes tend to, just kind of, if you get real close or you disturb them, they'll start rattling, but they're not prone to start rattling from a big distance.
I one time was in Idaho on a rafting trip and went to the restroom in an outhouse. And I sat down and one started rattling. In the outhouse.
I
don't know what species it was.
I would have stood right back up.
I did.
I think we're moving to the big bucket now.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's get the big bucket
Let's
out.
get the big bucket.
This is the mean one.
Oh, great.
Oh, good.
Mean as a snake.
Yeah, if there were such thing as a mean snake, this would be my.
Is that a normal for character for this particular species you're fixing to show
No,
us?
they're generally pretty chill snakes. I've had numerous timber rattlesnakes, and
you can
most
tell he's
of them,
heavy.
most of them are super chill. But this one, and I don't know why, it's just his personality. He is not super chill. He's super
I might need to stand up.
I would really love to bite you.
Let me go ahead and stand
So-
up.
Yeah, here we go.
But
You be careful now.
I will.
Here he goes.
Oh, I can hear him.
He's ripping it.
Yeah, and
Look at him.
unfortunately,
He's looking out. Mac, he's staring at you.
He's like,
come out of the bucket.
oh my goodness.
Come on. Come on, buddy.
Oh, yeah. That's what's at my house.
So that's the timber rattlesnake.
There he is,
All right?
yeah.
Like you were talking about, Bobby. You ran into the other day. This is by far the most common rattlesnake. Now, that pygmy rattlesnake can be found throughout the state of Alabama and throughout Mississippi. But they're not very common unless you get right up close to the Gulf Coast. Basically, I say the closer you get to the Gulf of Mexico, the more common they are. Whereas timber rattlesnakes are just the most common rattlesnake regardless of the habitat. They can be found in pine plantations, they can be found in swamps, they can be found in rocky areas. They're kind of the habitat generalist. They can live in a lot of places. They can eat anything from squirrels to mice to cotton rats, things like that.
Is this what people refer to as a cane break?
Yep.
Okay.
Back in the 70s and 80s, there was a thought that they might be 2 different species, the timber rattlesnake and the cane break. Turns out they're the same species, but people call them cane breaks, or down in South Alabama, a lot of people call them velvet tails. They got that black velvety tail. It's a great way to identify them.
My buddy Kyle
tail.
Bennett posted a photo of one the other day that was almost white. It was like gray looking.
Oh,
He
yeah.
found in the wild. It was beautiful.
I'm amazed at how
I've
you
seen
keep
some
him
with
on
the
that
red
stick.
stripe, too, it seems like.
Yeah.
You ever seen
and-
them with the red stripe going
Yeah,
down their
and
back?
I mean, this one has a chestnut stripe going down its back. But yeah, they can have a reddish or chestnut or or even mahogany stripe down their back.
But for the most part, you and other biologists say this is a pretty docile snake.
Yeah, in general, they're pretty docile. But snakes are individual creatures, and this one, I just don't trust him.
He's quite inquisitive.
Yeah, a little too inquisitive. He knows his strike distance, and
So what is
I don't
the
want to
strike
be
distance?
within it.
Yeah.
So their strike distance is about a third to a half of their body length, and it's greatly dependent on. Snakes are masters at understanding physics. They have PhDs in physics and can determine, how to orient their body best to maximize the distance that they can throw that forward. And so, depending on his body's orientation, the most that he could strike would be about half his body length. On average would be about a third. But, depending on his orientation, they might not even be able to strike that. From this, he could probably strike, somewhere right in that zone right in there. Although I'm not going to tempt fate.
So have you, in your handling of snakes, ever had some kind of tragic some kind of bad accident? Has one ever gotten you somehow? Bit you?
No, not in all the work I've done with venomous snakes, which is why I do a lot of work with professionals now to teach them how to safely.
Oh, your handling is
handle
amazing.
Venomous snakes.
It's so effortless.
In fact,
looking.
a lot of my friends call me the safety freak because I don't take risks. And that's because I work with a lot of venomous snakes. I mean,
Right.
in simple statistics, if you work with several thousand venomous snakes and you're careless,
You're going to get bit.
eventually something's going to go wrong, you know, and I want to be as safe as possible. So I do a lot of work now with first responders, police, animal control, firefighters, things like that, to teach them how to safely remove venomous snakes and work with venomous snakes, ID venomous snakes, cover snake bite treatment, things like that.
Well, look, let's put him back in the bucket and let's close.
Bobby,
let's
not
let's
yet.
sit down and close this thing out.
We'll get
He's
him
beautiful.
back in.
He just looks agitated.
Well, he always kind of looks agitated.
He likes
doesn't want to go in.
No, he
I
doesn't want to
know.
go in
He's
there.
like, no, I kind of like it out here. Let's go back in, buddy.
Oh, man.
Nighty night.
He said no.
Well, I'm going to say yes.
Oh,
There he goes.
there he goes. Oh, thank you.
Hey, I wonder what that.
And
I wonder
he-
what that hoop was for.
And he grabs the bucket lid with the
Yeah, there you
pole.
go.
Yeah, you are very safe, eh?
Yeah, I mean,
He's talking.
I like I said,
Nobody
I
trying
like
to
to
get bit.
practice what I preach, I
Yeah.
don't want to get bitten, and I don't want other people to get bitten, because every snake bite basically adds up to a bad rap for snakes,
Mm-hmm.
and quite a few snake bites are from people that were somehow messing with the snakes.
Yeah.
I mean, the majority of them are not. The majority of people that are bitten by snakes, it's an accidental bite. But there are a lot of people bitten every year because they were, messing with the snake, trying to kill it, trying to pick it up, trying to do things they shouldn't. And
So, Jimmy, is there something that you want to, a point you need to make sure that you make about snakes, or some kind of, before we start wrapping this thing up?
Yeah, I mean, I'll wrap up. A good friend of mine, Chris Jenkins, has a podcast out there called Snake Talk, and they talk about snakes, as you might guess, on that podcast. And he likes to always say, snakes are animals too, and it's a privilege to see one in the wild.
Yeah.
Like we should, we should enjoy that. Venomous snakes. Are part of our natural heritage as well. And if you go in the ocean, there's sharks, right? And we shouldn't just eliminate all the sharks out of the oceans. we shouldn't get rid of all the grizzly bears in the western United States. We shouldn't get rid of all the snakes in the eastern United States. They're part of our natural heritage. And we should learn to live with them and respect them while we're out there being outdoorsmen.
They're
100%.
God's creatures
100%.
too.
That's right. 100%.
So how can they can follow you on Facebook or Instagram?
Sure.
What
yeah.
is your?
You can hit me up. Follow my Instagram, which is at JRStiles75. That's STILES, JRSTILES 75. Or hit me up on my email, and that's jrstyles75 at gmail.com. And if you're interested in, say you work with first responders or interested in helping promote our work with first responders, then please send me an email, send me a message, and we can get you set up and do some trainings for them.
Nice.
Well, look, we're going to turn the tables on you just a little bit. I
love it.
meant to do this at the beginning, and I just got sidetracked with these snakes. But we always turn it over to Dudley and let him ask a few questions. And
We're going
again,
rapid fire today?
yeah. So Dudley, are you ready?
Yeah.
I'm all about
Mr.
it.
Jimmy, are you ready?
So this is brought to us by our buddies at Springfield.
That's right. My
He's
mind
so
is just
that rattlesnake just got him tore up
everywhere.
over. He can't even talk.
And look, Springfield Army. If a snake got out, Springfield Army was going to play a big role in security.
All right.
Here we go.
Are you ready?
I am.
Okay.
So you want to explain first? He's going to give you.
He listens.
Oh,
Lanny.
well, my bad.
When I called him about being on the podcast, he knew exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah.
All right.
I was
Somebody
already
put-
subscribed to the podcast.
Yeah,
If it has to do with hunting, fishing, conservation,
You're in there.
I'm in there.
I love
It's
it.
in my zone.
Sweet.
It's in my wheelhouse.
Sweet.
Excuse me then.
That's
Yeah.
all right.
All right. Are you ready?
I am.
Regular barbecue sauce or white barbecue sauce?
Regular.
Livers or gizzards?
Livers.
Turkey breast or turkey thighs?
I love turkey. Both.
There you
Fried
Both.
green tomatoes or sliced ripe homegrown tomatoes?
Both.
Boom.
I love them.
Roll Tide or War Damn Eagle?
War damn eagle. Even
Copperhead,
though I worked for both.
okay. Copperhead Road, Steve Earle, or Snake Farm, Ray Wiley Hubbard?
Copperhead Road.
Boom.
Yeah.
Favorite wildlife plant, Chinese privet or calorie pear?
Ooh. Neither.
Turkey hunt at home or travel to hunt?
Oh man, that's so tough. I hadn't gotten into traveling until recently, and I've started to really love it. But turkey hunt at home.
Okay, love it. Common name or scientific name?
Common name.
Snake chaps, snake boots, or neither?
Snake boots first, then snake chaps.
Ooh, okay, both.
Both.
When you were young, did you play Dungeons and Dragons? Yes or no?
I did not.
You were outside. Creek
was.
fish or pond fish?
Creek fish for sure.
All right, and last but not least, beard trimmer or razor blade?
I don't use either.
Neither. That was
All right.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think you. When's the last time you shaved?
It was in 1995. That was the last
28
time I
years
shaved
ago.
or cut
That's
my
awesome.
hair.
Yeah.
It was 1995.
That's awesome.
Well, I tell you what, we've really enjoyed getting to meet you.
Absolutely
But
enjoyed you.
Mac,
I love it.
why don't you? We've got a trivia question now, and you've heard this, but if you get this right, one of our listeners that left a review wins a prize.
Hopefully,
All right,
hopefully I'll do pretty good. I like trivia.
So you're playing for Arrows and Oaks 1987. And if you get it right, then we'll send them a companion shirt.
Cool.
Nice.
All right. So the question is, what is the fastest snake in North America?
In North America? Wow. It'd either be the Black Racer or the Coach Whip. Maybe the Coach Whip?
There
we go.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Love it. I've caught a lot of Coach Whips. They're super fast. I call them face biters because they'll also bite you in the face.
Oh yeah. No,
They say that they'll go up to 18 miles per hour, 14 to 18.
I can believe that. I've chased them through the woods and I couldn't keep up.
Wow. Well, look, when
Thoroughly
I think
enjoyed
about that, we got some youngins out there that want to have a private presentation. And
Sure, love
so
it.
you're going to be busy for a little while. But
That's
Jimmy,
all right.
you've been very impressive in your
Yeah.
explanation.
Thank
And
you.
good luck with this PhD. We understand you're real close to getting to being Dr. Jimmy Styles.
I'm working on it as much as I can stand to.
And we'd love to get you on a turkey hunt somewhere and let's see if you can.
I would love that. I will travel.
When they're gobbling good down there, holler and we'll come down there. That'd be the easiest thing to do.
Hey, y'all are welcome. I love turkey hunting so much. I don't have to be the one that pulls the trigger. I just like going out there and listening to them gobble and having the whole deal go down. So
Yeah, that's
cool.
us. Yeah.
whoever pulls the trigger,
The deal
is-
go down.
That's right.
Well, I tell you what, we've enjoyed meeting you, and you represent. You made me kind of change my opinion about snakes, and
that's good. That's kind of what I go for in my life, is to change people's perceptions about snakes and reptiles in general.
Cool.
Well, I still
Thank you for your service.
No doubt.
Yeah, I still don't trust Dudley, but
Well,
now
I
I
don't
do
blame you.
think a little bit more about these snakes. So,
I can't blame you.
yeah, Mac, you got anything else to add?
I'm good. Go to plantbiologic.com.
Yeah.
Nurseries.
Yeah, that's for sure. And Richie,
Gamekeeper
what about
season.
you? Don't.
No, I'm good. I'm just.
Is the LS back here?
It's it's been back. See, it's been back for a week.
Yeah, 24 hours.
I need to go look at this thing. I'm nervous.
Yeah, it's just cosmetic from
Well, it's just well. Let me back up. One thing I didn't throw in there. I forgot that when last time I was working on these brush piles, I was doing with the chainsaw and all that, and I ran into a snake.
Yeah.
And so that's why I got the LS involved, and because I
Blame
turned
it
out
on the snake. Of
and so-
course.
Yeah, look at
it turned out.
There
But
it
listen,
is. He's
so
one of
it-
those guys.
It turned out, it was a black racer, but it made a rattle sound, like it hit the brush and stuff,
Oh,
man.
yeah.
And so
They'll
it freaked
do
me
that.
out.
Kill Privet, plant native.
There you
Yeah,
go.
yeah. Jimmy, we've enjoyed
Burn.
having you.
It's been my pleasure.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
been
We're gonna
being
get you a companion shirt before you leave. So,
wonderful. Thank you.
looking around, I think that's everything. Why don't you say goodbye, Dudley?
Goodbye, Dudley.
Get us out of here, Mac.
Let's count his snakes now before he.
He's got them. I saw all the buckets.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Gamekeeper podcast, and be sure to tune in again. Subscribe to Gamekeeper Farming for Wildlife magazine, and don't miss the Mossy Oak Properties Fistful of Dirt podcast with my good buddy Ronnie Cuz Strickland.